"You're touching it wrong." The voice was liquid silver laced with something sharp like fractured crystal. Kalen froze, hand hovering over the pulsating glyph on the ancient console. He wasn't alone, Scrap. He dropped into a defensive crouch, scanner pistol snapping up, the beam cutting a nervous path through the humid, vine-choked air of the temple ruin. He saw her then, perched impossibly high on a crumbling archway, legs tucked beneath her, watching him with an unnerving stillness. She wasn't human. Not even close. Her skin seemed to flow, shifting from pearlescent white to deep indigo, marked with intricate patterns that pulsed with soft, internal light. Delicate, iridescent fins flared along her forearms and spine, catching the stray beams of sunlight filtering through the canopy far above. A slender tail, tipped with something that looked like spun glass, twitched behind her. She tilted her head and the light patterns on her face swirled, coalescing around large, obsidian eyes that held no discernible pupils, only reflected starlight. "The resonance is flat," she added, her voice echoing slightly in the vast chamber. Kalen kept the pistol trained on her. "Who the hell are you? And how did you get in here past my parent?" "Tur scanners." He'd set up tri-wires, audio sensors, the works. This moon was supposed to be deserted, a forgotten blip perfect for scavenging relics like this console. She flowed down from the archway like smoke, landing silently on the mossy flagstones barely 10 feet away. Closer now, he saw the faint shimmer around her like heat haze and caught a scent, ozone and something sweet, intoxicating. "Your wires." A ripple of amusement flowed across her skin in waves of emerald light. "Quaint. They do not perceive pathways of energy, only clumsy matter," she gestured dismissively. "This place sings, I followed the song." She stepped closer, ignoring the weapon aimed at her chest. Her focus was entirely on the console. "You disturb the harmony, your touch is loud, rough." Kalen didn't lower the gun, but confusion warred with caution. She wasn't acting hostile, just critical, and weirdly beautiful in a way that made his nerves hum. "Look, I'm just trying to get this thing powered up." Salvage operation. He tried to sound tougher than he felt. Her attention snapped back to him, those dark eyes seeming to drink him in. The light on her skin flickered, shifting to warmer tones, golds, soft pinks. "Salvage," the word sounded alien. On her tongue. "You seek to take this resonance, cage it." She took another step. He reflexively stepped back, bumping against the console, too close. "No, well, yes, parts of it, the power core, maybe the data crystal if it's intact." He felt ridiculous justifying himself to whatever she was. She cocked her head again, the fins along her spine vibrating slightly. "Why?" he blinked. "Why? For credits, to eat, to keep my ship flying. The usual reasons." Her brow furrowed, the light patterns there darkening to a deep violet. "You require credits to exist." She reached out a hand, long fingers tipped with claws that looked more like polished obsidian than keratin. He flinched, pressing back against the cool stone of the console. "Don't touch me." Her hand stopped inches from his chest. The light on her skin dimmed slightly, swirling uncertainly. "Your energy is turbulent, fearful. Why?" She sounded genuinely perplexed. "Because strange, glowing women who sneak past my security and criticize my salvage technique tend to make me nervous." Her lips curved in what might have been a smile. It made the light on her cheeks dance. "You are noisy, even when still." She retracted her hand but didn't move away. The proximity was unsettling. He could feel a faint warmth radiating from her, smell that strange, addictive scent more strongly. "This console is keyed to my lineage. Only the correct resonance can awaken it fully. Your prodding could fracture the crystal." She gestured towards the glyph he'd been about to press. "That requires a harmonic sequence initiated here." She pointed to a different, almost invisible etching on the side. "You would have caused a feedback loop." "Great." Lectured by the local glowing fauna. "Okay, fine. You know the magic words. How about you power it up, I grab the core, and we both go our separate ways." She considered him, her gaze sweeping over him again, lingering on his face, his hands. The light patterns intensified, shifting rapidly through jewel tones. "Perhaps. But first, tell me why you hide your own light, noisy human." Her question hung in the damp air, nonsensical and deeply personal all at once. "Hide my light? What are you talking about? I'm not glowing." Kalen shifted his weight, the grip on his pistol slick with sweat. This close, he could see the incredibly fine scales that covered parts of her skin, shimmering beneath the flowing light. Her presence was overwhelming his senses. She tilted her head, mimicking His earlier gesture, a spark of something like amusement in those dark eyes. The light on her skin pulsed a soft azure. Not externally, inside, a tightly coiled core burning low, faint but persistent like a shielded ember. She gestured vaguely towards his chest. You dampen it, why? He stared at her. Was she reading his biosigns, some kind of empath, or just completely nuts? Look, lady, he trailed off, realizing he didn't know what to call her. Xylia, she supplied smoothly, the name a cascade of soft consonants. The light around her warmed slightly, a blush of rose gold. My designation. Right, Xylia. I don't know anything about internal embers or shielded lights. I'm just a guy trying to make a living. He tried to inject some finality into his tone, hoping she'd get back to the console. Instead, she stepped even closer, invading his personal space entirely. He instinctively stiffened, pressing back against the ancient stone, the pistol still awkwardly held between them. Her strange ozone and sweetness scent was thick in the air, making his head swim slightly. A guy, she repeated, tasting the word. The light patterns on her face swirled with curiosity, flickering gold and green. Your species defines itself by such minimal terms. Her gaze dropped to the pistol, then back to his eyes. This tool, it projects force, hostility, yet your core light, it resonates with loneliness, a longing for harmony. He jerked the pistol slightly. Get out of my head, or whatever it is you're doing. Panic started to bubble beneath his sarcasm. She wasn't just weird, she felt invasive. Her lips curved again, that unsettlingly beautiful smile. I am doing nothing, Kalen, he froze. How do you know my name? Her smile widened. It echoes in your mind when you think of yourself, loudly, like most things about you. She reached out again, faster this time, not towards his chest but towards the pistol. Her fingers, cool and surprisingly strong, closed over his hand, covering the weapon. A jolt, like static electricity but deeper, shot up his arm. Where her skin touched his, the light on her hand flared bright white, and the intricate patterns on her arm pulsed in time with his suddenly racing heartbeat. He gasped, trying to pull away, but her grip was firm. Resonance, she murmured, her eyes fixed on their joined hands. The light flowed from her touch, a visible energy that seemed to sink into his skin, warm and tingling. It wasn't unpleasant. That was the disturbing part. It felt connecting. You see, even your fear has a frequency, sharp, staccato. She gently eased the pistol from his grasp, her movements fluid and certain. He let her take it, his mind reeling from the sensory input. She examined the weapon with detached curiosity, turning it over in her hands. The light on her skin softened back to azure and violet. A crude amplifier for a dissonant thought. Why carry such ugliness? She tossed it carelessly onto a mossy patch near the wall. It landed with a soft thud. Kalen stared at his empty hand, then at her. He was disarmed, cornered, and talking to a glowing alien empath who thought his gun was ugly. Just another Tuesday. Look, he said, trying to regain some control, can we just focus? The console, credits, remember. Xylia turned back to the console, her attention shifting as quickly as the lights beneath her skin. Yes, the harmony. She placed her palm flat against the stone surface, near the glyph she'd indicated earlier. The moment she touched it, the glyphs ignited, bathing the chamber in a soft, turquoise glow. Lines of light raced across the console and up the walls, connecting to other dormant panels. The air vibrated with a low, resonant hum. Xylia loosed her eyes, and the patterns on her own skin mirrored the flow of energy, pulsing in perfect synchronicity. She was part of it, communicating with it on a level he couldn't comprehend. He watched, fascinated despite his apprehension. The sheer alienness of it was captivating. The power flowing through her was palpable, a tangible force in the humid air. This wasn't just salvage, this was something else, something ancient and alive, and she was its key. The hum intensified, filling the chamber, vibrating not just in the air but deep in Kalen's bones. It wasn't unpleasant, more like the thrum of a powerful engine coming online, but organic, ancient. Xylia remained perfectly still, eyes closed, her entire being seemingly focused on the flow of energy between her and the console. The light radiating from her softened, coalescing into intricate, lace-like patterns across her back and shoulders, glowing with a steady, calming luminescence. Kalen found himself holding his breath, caught between the urge to grab the discarded pistol and the sheer mesmerizing spectacle. He'd salvaged countless bits of alien tech, deactivated deadly security systems, sweet-talked paranoid port authorities, but he'd never encountered anything like this. Like her, the console emitted a series of soft chimes and a section near the center slid open, revealing a cavity bathed in the same turquoise light. Inside, nestled on a bed of what looked like spun crystal fibers, was a multifaceted gem easily the size of his fist. It pulsed with its own internal light, mirroring the rhythm of the console, and Kalen suspected Xylia herself. The power core, worth a lifetime of easy living. Enough to upgrade the rust bucket, maybe even buy a small moon somewhere quiet. Freedom. His gaze flicked to Xylia. Her eyes slowly opened, the obsidian depth seeming to hold the reflected light of the core. She looked drained. The vibrant glow of her skin had dimmed, leaving the shifting patterns fainter, more subtle against the pearlescent undertones. She swayed slightly, bracing a hand against the console. "The resonance is established," she murmured, her voice softer now, tinged with exhaustion. "But the conduit, it demands much." He hesitated. His goal was right there, practically gift-wrapped. Grab it and run. That was the plan. That was always the plan. But looking at her, pale and depleted, leaning heavily on the machine she just coaxed back to life, running felt wrong, complicated, annoying. "Are you okay?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. Her head lifted slowly, those dark eyes focusing on him again. A faint ripple of gold light surprise crossed her features. "Okay," she tested the word. "A term for acceptable stasis. Something like that. You look like you're about to keel over." She straightened slightly, though the effort seemed to cost her. The fins along her spine fluttered weakly. "The energy transfer is taxing, especially after dormancy." Dormancy. What did that mean? Before he could ask, she gestured towards the open cavity. "There, your credits." He looked at the core, then back at her. The pragmatic scavenger part of his brain screamed at him to take it. The other part, the part she seemed to weirdly sense, the part that felt the echo of her loneliness, remark, urged caution, or maybe decency, scrap. Since when was he decent? "Right," he said, trying to sound nonchalant. He stepped towards the console, deliberately avoiding brushing against her. He reached for the core, his fingers hesitating just above its pulsating surface. It radiated warmth and that same low vibration. He could almost feel the power thrumming within it. He glanced at Xylia again. She was watching his hand, her expression unreadable, the light on her skin shifting in slow, muted waves of violet and gray. "Taking this won't hurt you, or the temple," she shook her head slowly. "The core provides localized energy. The temple's primary matrix draws from the moon's own field now that the conduit is open. Removing the core will merely dim this chamber." She paused, her gaze intensifying. "But its resonance is unique, irreplaceable, part of the song, part of the song." He didn't understand, not really, but he felt the weight of it. Taking this felt less like salvage and more like theft, like tearing a verse out of a poem. Still, credits were credits. Survival was survival. He wrapped his fingers around the smooth, multifaceted surface of the core. It felt warm, alive, pulsing gently in his grip. He carefully lifted it from its cradle. Instantly, the brilliant turquoise light in the chamber faded to a soft, ambient glow. The deep hum lessened, becoming a background whisper. Xylia flinched as if struck, a soft gasp escaping her lips. The remaining light on her skin flickered violently, then settled into a dim, troubled gray. She clutched the edge of the console tighter. "Okay," Kalen said quickly, feeling a pang of something that might have been guilt. "Got it. Let's go." He turned, expecting her to follow or maybe demand a share or try to stop him. Instead, she just stood there, looking smaller, dimmer, her obsidian eyes fixed on the empty cradle where the core had rested. "You're not coming." Kalen paused at the crumbling archway that led back towards the jungle and hopefully his ship. He held the power core carefully in one hand. It pulsed with a steady, reassuring warmth against his palm. Xylia hadn't moved. She remained by the console, her silhouette faint in the now dim chamber, the shifting lights on her skin barely visible. She looked lost. He'd gotten what he came for. More, even. He should be halfway back to the rust bucket by now, calculating jump coordinates and counting potential profits. Leaving her here was the smart play, the professional play. So why was he still standing here? She finally turned her head, her gaze distant. Where would I go? The question was soft, almost swallowed by the vastness of the temple. With you, Kalen shifted uncomfortably. Well, yeah, I mean you helped me, sort of, and you look like hell. Maybe I could drop you somewhere, a settlement. Your home. A ripple of something cold, silver and gray light flowed acro. Assess her skin. This was my home, or a sanctuary, one of many now lost. She gestured vaguely at the ruins. My people, the Lumina, we built these resonant nodes across the systems, places of harmony, until the dissonance came. Dissonance? He didn't like the sound of that. What dissonance? She looked away again, tracing a pattern on the console with one fingertip. No light followed her touch this time. They came to silence the song, to capture the light. They hunt those who carry the resonance. Slavers, or something worse. He thought of her unique appearance, the palpable energy she wielded. She'd be a prize catch for certain collectors or researchers. Suddenly, leaving her alone felt less like the smart play and more like a death sentence. Scrap. He sighed, rubbing his free hand over his face. His carefully guarded solitude, his simple in-and-out salvage plan, all shot to hell by a glowing alien princess with sad eyes and resonance problems. Look, I don't know what's going on, he said, walking back towards her. But you can't stay here. If these dissonance folks are hunting your kind, this place is compromised now that you've activated it. It's broadcasting a signal, right? She nodded slowly. The harmony call, it reach. Ease for others. Which means it reaches for the bad guys too. He stopped in front of her. My ship isn't much, but it's shielded and it's fast. I can get you off this moon at least, somewhere safer. She studied him, her dark eyes searching his face. The light on her skin remained muted, but a faint flicker of turquoise appeared near her temples. Why would you offer this? You have your credits. She gestured towards the core in his hand. He shrugged, feeling awkward. Maybe I don't like leaving people to be hunted. Maybe you intrigue me. Maybe I'm just stupid. Pick one. A tiny smile touched her lips, the first genuine-looking one he'd seen. It sent a wash of soft gold across her cheeks. Perhaps all three. He couldn't help but grin back. Probably. So, are you coming, Xylia, or are you going to wait here for the welcoming committee? She hesitated for only a moment longer, her gaze sweeping over the dim chamber one last time. Then she pushed away from the console and glided towards him, her movements regaining some of their earlier fluidity despite her obvious fatigue. I will accompany you, Kalen the noisy human. Great. Just to try not to critique my piloting, okay? He turned and led the way out, acutely aware of our silent presence behind him. The jungle air felt thick and heavy after the cool stone of the temple. As they emerged into the dappled sunlight, he glanced back. The light on her skin seemed to drink in the sun, intensifying slightly, shifting from gray back towards pale blues and greens. She blinked, her iridescent fins flaring slightly as she adjusted to the brightness. Okay, step 1. Get the alien princess off the moon. Step 2. Figure out what the hell he'd just gotten himself into. Step 3. Try not to get distracted by the way the sunlight made the shifting patterns on her skin look like liquid jewels. Simple. Getting Xylia onto the rust bucket was an experience. Kalen's ship was functional, cluttered, and built for solitary hauling, not accommodating luminous alien royalty. Everything was slightly grimy, smelling faintly of recycled air, old engine coolant, and yesterday's synth noodles. Xylia paused at the entry ramp, her obsidian eyes taking in the cramped, utilitarian space with an expression Kalen couldn't quite decipher. The light on her skin flickered rapidly through shades of gray, violet, and a strange, muddy orange he hadn't seen before. This vessel, she began, her voice hesitant. It is contained. Contained? It's a freighter, not a pleasure cruiser, Kalen retorted, squeezing past her into the narrow corridor that led to the cockpit. Watch your head. He gestured towards a low-hanging conduit wrapped in fraying insulation tape. She ducked gracefully, her tail trailing behind her, brushing against a stack of unsecured cargo netting. The netting instantly lit up where she'd touched it, glowing with residual turquoise energy that faded after a few seconds. Kaelin blinked. Okay, try not to touch anything. Xylia looked at her hand, then at the glowing netting, then back at Kaelin. A ripple of soft pink light embarrassment crossed her features. My energy signature is resonant, it interacts. Yeah, I'm getting that. He led her into the cockpit, which was barely large enough for two. He strapped himself into the pilot's seat, the worn synth leather groaning in protest. There was only one other seat, a fold-down jump seat usually piled with navigation charts and empty ration packs. He hastily cleared it off. Have a seat. Might be a bumpy ride out of atmosphere. Xylia eyed the seat warily, then gracefully folded herself into it. It was clearly too small for her. Her knees were drawn up and her tail curled awkward. Lyre-vu. In the base. She rested her hands in her lap, fingers interlaced, the light on her skin pulsing a low, anxious violet. Kaelin focused on the pre-flight sequence, flicking switches and running diagnostics. The familiar routine helped ground him. Engines whined, consoles flickered to life, the ship vibrating around them. Strap in, he advised, pointing to the harness. She examined the webbing with curiosity, then mimicked his movements, securing herself. As the ship lifted off, rumbling through the jungle canopy and banking hard towards orbit, she gripped the armrests, her knuckles white. The light on her skin flared bright silver, shot through with streaks of alarmed crimson. Is this normal? She asked, her voice tight as the ship bucked against atmospheric turbulence. Normal for the rust bucket, Kaelin grunted, wrestling with the controls. She's got character. He risked a glance at her. Even tense and clearly uncomfortable, there was an elegance about her that seemed utterly out of place amidst the dented panels and flickering lights of his cockpit. The stark contrast was compelling. Once they broke atmosphere and the ride smoothed out, the planet shrinking below them into a swirl of green and blue, Xylia visibly relaxed. The light on her skin softened to a calmer azure, patterned with slow pulses of gold. She gazed out the viewport at the stardusted blackness, her expression rapt. So vast, she murmured, the silence between the songs. Kaelin punched in coordinates for a quiet asteroid field a few systems away where they could lie low and figure things out. Yeah, space is big. He activated the autopilot and finally leaned back, stretching. The adrenaline from the temple and the escape was fatting, leaving him tired and acutely aware of the strange, glowing woman sitting beside him. The power core sat wedged securely in a storage locker behind his seat, its steady pulse a faint thrumming he could still feel. All right, he said, turning his seat slightly to face her. Talk to me, Xylia. Who are the dissonance people? Why are they hunting you? And what does being dormant for? How long was it? She met his gaze, her own serious. The Z-Crow. They consume resonance, absorb light, absorb life. They brought silence to my people. A shiver seemed to pass through her, visible as a wave of disturbed gray light. They shattered our network node by node. I retreated here, placed myself in resonant stasis within the temple matrix. Waiting. She paused. Her eyes unfocused for a moment. The temporal distortion within the field I cannot be certain, but the stars, they feel older. Kaelin felt a chill despite the cockpit's heating. How much older? Xylia looked back at him, her gaze piercing. By your measure, perhaps a century, 100 years, alone, waiting in some kind of energy stasis inside a forgotten temple. The thought was staggering. No wonder she seemed drained, disoriented. No wonder his presence, however noisy, had prompted interaction. He suddenly understood the depth of the loneliness he thought he'd sensed in her. It wasn't just a fleeting feeling, it was a chasm carved by time and loss. He found himself reaching out, wanting to offer something. Comfort, reassurance. He stopped his hand before it made contact, remembering her reaction to touch, his own unease. Instead, he just met her gaze. Scrap, he breathed softly. 100 years. The silence stretched between them, thick with the weight of that century. Kaelin didn't know what to say. Sorry your entire civilization got wiped out while you were sleeping, seemed inadequate. He drummed his fingers on the console, the cockpit feeling smaller than ever. Xylia watched him, her head tilted slightly, light on her skin, a shifting tapestry of muted blues and violets, mirroring the nebula drift outside the viewport. Your core light flickers with empathy, she observed, her voice soft. Is that common for your species? He snorted, looking away. Not common enough, especially not in my line of work. He ran a hand through his hair. Look, 100 years, that's rough, more than rough. I can't even imagine. Imagination is not required, she said simply. The echo remains. She lifted a hand, palm up, between them. A faint pattern of silver light coalesced there, swirling like smoke. Resonance carries memory, emotion, loss. He looked at the light, then back at her face. She seemed so self-contained, yet the shifting light betrayed a universe of feeling just beneath the surface. He felt an unexpected urge to understand, to bridge the gap between his rough, practical world and her ethereal, energy-based existence. So these Z-Crow, he said, forcing his mind back to practicalities. Do you think they picked up on the temple activation? It is likely. The harmony call, once initiated, cannot be easily masked. They hunt such signals. Her hand closed, the silver light dissipating. They will search this sector. Great, just. Great, Kalen sighed, already calculating fuel consumption and potential hideouts. We need to get further out, find somewhere they won't look. Where is further out? She asked, genuine curiosity in her tone. Someplace dissonant, unharmonious, he chuckled grimly. You could say that, Port Xantus. It's a scavenger outpost on a junk moon. Scummiest place this side of the outer rim. No harmony there, I guarantee it. Just grit, desperation, and bad synthale. He expected her to recoil, but she just nodded slowly, considering it. A place of noise. Perhaps they would not seek a pure resonance there. Exactly. They'd stick out like a well, like you would, frankly. He eyed her glowing skin. We need to figure out how to make you less conspicuous. Xylia looked down at herself, tracing a pattern on her forearm. The light dimmed under her touch. I can dampen the external luminescence. It requires focus and is uncomfortable. Like holding one's breath. Can you make it stop completely, just for getting through the port? She concentrated, and the light on her skin faded further, the intricate patterns becoming faint gray markings against her pale skin. She looked diminished, more solid somehow, but also vulnerable. A soft frown creased her brow. Sustaining this is difficult. It muffles my perception of ambient energies. Just long enough to get us docked and find a private room, okay? Xantus isn't friendly to off-worlders, especially unique ones. He felt a protective instinct flare up, sharp and unwelcome. He was used to looking out for number one. This was new territory. What will you do there, Kalen the noisy human? She asked, the dampened light making her eyes seem even larger, darker. Besides acquire synthale. Sell the core, he said automatically. Then he hesitated, looking at her, knowing what it represented, not just credits but a piece of her lost heritage, a fragment of the song. The thought suddenly felt crass, but what choice did he have? Fuel, repairs, supplies, they all cost credits. Freedom wasn't free. I need the funds, he added, trying to justify it mostly to himself. To keep us moving, to keep you safe. She didn't argue or protest. She simply watched him, her expression unreadable in the low light. Safety, she echoed softly. Is that what the credits truly purchase? Her question hit a little too close to home. He always told himself the next score, the next big haul, would buy him freedom, peace, safety. But did it? Or did it just buy him passage to the next risk, the next lonely outpost? He looked away, focusing on the star charts again. They help, he muttered. He set a new course for Port Xantus, the engines humming steadily as the rust bucket plunged deeper into the indifferent void. Beside him, Xylia sat silently, a beacon of faded light in the darkness, radiating a profound stillness that felt both ancient and incredibly fragile. And Kalen felt the comfortable, cynical solitude he'd curated for years beginning to fracture around the edges. Port Xantus was exactly as Kalen remembered. A chaotic sprawl of repurposed ship hulls, prefab shelters, and tangled docking clamps clinging precariously to a scarred, airless moon. Landing bays hissed steam and vented questionable fumes, illuminating figures scurrying through pools of harsh industrial light. The airlock cycled open onto a cacophony of noise, shouting, clanging metal, distorted music blaring from unseen cantinas. The air tasted metallic and stale. Okay, remember, Kalen murmured, pulling the collar of his jacket higher. Dampen the light show, stay close, look bored. Xylia nodded, concentrating. The faint residual glow on her skin vanished completely, leaving her looking pale and strangely human-like if you ignored the subtle fins and the graceful, almost feline way she moved. Her tail was tucked away, somehow concealed beneath the loose, dark traveling cloak Kalen had found for her in his meager stores. She pulled the hood up, shadowing her face. Even dimmed and cloaked, she drew glances. Her height, her posture, the sheer alienness that clung to her despite the disguise, she stood out. Kalen put a hand lightly on her back, intending to guide her, but flinched slightly at the unexpected coolness of her cloaked form. Without the light, she felt different, solid yet somehow absent. "This way," he said gruffly, steering her towards the dilapidated processing station. He flashed his commercial hauler credentials, mostly legitimate, at a bored-looking grand official whose tusks were stained with what looked like engine grease. The official grunted, barely glancing at Xylia, and waved them through. Small mercies. Navigating the crowded, grimy corridors of Xantus was an assault on the senses. Species from a dozen systems jostled and swore. Hawkers peddled dubious tech and even more dubious food, and the smell was a pungent mix of ozone, unwashed bodies, spilled liquor, and despair. Ration ka. Alen kept a firm grip on his blaster, retrieved from the temple floor, thankfully, holstered at his hip, and scanned the crowds constantly. Xylia stayed close behind him, her head down, moving with a silence that was unnerving amidst the chaos. He could feel her tension, though. It wasn't a visible light show anymore, but a subtle stiffness in her posture, the way her hand occasionally clenched at her side. He spotted a familiar sign, the Greasy Wrench, a notoriously discreet lodging house run by a retired smuggler named Grok. "In here," he muttered, pushing through the swinging doors. The inside was dim, smelled strongly of stale synthale and fried nerve tendons, and was marginally quieter than the main thoroughfare. A hulking, four-armed basilisk wiped down the bar with a greasy rag. "Grok," Kalen greeted him. Grok squinted with one set of eyes, then the other. "Kalen. Thought you were vaporized out near the Kepler drift. Rumors of my demise, etc., Kalen said dryly. "Need a room, quiet, rear access, no questions." Grok's gaze slid past Kalen to Xylia, lingering for a moment on her cloaked form. He grunted again, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Got the old suite free, backstairs, standard rate plus a no-queue. Eustion's surcharge." Naturally. Kalen slapped a few credit chips onto the sticky bar top, enough for a couple of nights. Selling the core would take time, careful negotiation. Grok scooped up the credits with one massive hand and produced a battered keycard with another. "Corridor C, Unit 6, don't break anything." "Wouldn't dream of it." Kalen took the keycard and steered Xylia towards a darkened corridor marked C. The room was small, functional, and relatively clean, which was high praise for Xantus. A narrow bunk, a fresher unit that probably worked, and a single window overlooking a grimy ventilation shaft. Kalen locked the door behind them, the heavy thunk echoing in the sudden silence. He turned to find Xylia standing in the middle of the room, hood still up. "Okay," he breathed, relief washing over him. "Phase 1 complete. We're relatively safe here for now." Xylia slowly lowered her hood. In the dim light filtering from the window, her face was pale, her eyes wide and dark. She swayed slightly, reaching out to brace herself against the wall. "The noise," she whispered, her voice strained. "It's overwhelming. So many fractured signals. Pain, greed, despair, it's loud." Without the external glow, she seemed to be absorbing the ambient psychic static of the port, and it was clearly agonizing. Before Kalen could react, her knees buckled. He lunged forward, catching her just before she hit the floor. She felt lighter than he expected, yet incredibly dense, like holding condensed energy. She sagged against him, her face buried in his jacket, her body trembling. The coolness he'd felt earlier was gone, replaced by a radiating heat. Instinctively, he wrapped his arms around her, holding her steady. He could feel the rapid beat of her heart against his chest, the faint vibration of her fins through the cloak. "Easy," he murmured, awkwardly patting her back. "Easy, it's okay, it's just Xantus, it's always like this." She shuddered, clinging to him. "Make it stop," she pleaded, her voice muffled. "The dissonance, it scrapes." He held her tighter, unsure what else to do. He wasn't a rescuer, wasn't a protector. He was a scavenger who'd stumbled into something way over his head. But holding her now, feeling her raw vulnerability, her desperate need for sanctuary from the overwhelming psychic noise of this wretched place, something shifted inside him. The pragmatic shields he kept so carefully maintained cracked just a little wider. He wasn't just Ling cargo anymore. He was sheltering a refugee, a lost princess from a dead civilization who was currently falling apart in his arms. And the terrifying part, he didn't want to let her go. He half-carried, half-guided her towards the narrow bunk, easing her down onto the thin mattress. She curled up immediately, pulling the cloak tighter around herself, her trembling slowly subsiding into a tense stillness. Her eyes were closed, her brow furrowed in concentration, as if trying to erect internal barriers against the sensory assault of Port Xantis. Kaelin stood awkwardly for a moment, watching her. The room felt incredibly small, charged with her distress. He wanted to help, but he felt utterly useless. His usual solutions, fly away, shoot something, talk his way out, didn't apply here. This was internal, alien, beyond his grasp. He walked over to the fresher unit. Miraculously, it produced a thin stream of lukewarm water. He splashed some on his face, trying to clear his head. The reflection that stared back was grimier and more tired than usual. What was he doing? Harboring a potentially high-value fugitive on the galaxy's sketchiest outpost, risking everything for someone he barely knew, someone who could literally glow. He be fencing the core, gassing up the rust bucket and disappearing into the nearest nebula. But the image of Xylia, pale and trembling, the memory of her plea, make it stop, wouldn't leave him. He found a semi-clean ration pack, nutrient paste, vaguely berry-flavored, and a water bulb in his pack. He hesitated, then walked back to the bunk. Xylia's eyes fluttered open as he approached. They looked unfocused, clouded with pain. "Here," he said softly, holding out the water bulb. "Drink something." She looked at the bulb, then at him, suspicion warring with need in her expression. "It is safe. It's water, filtered, probably." He gave a small shrug. "Safer than anything else on Xantis." Slowly she reached out and took the bulb, her cool fingers brushing his. A tiny spark, less intense than before but still there, jumped between them. She didn't flinch this time, just brought the bulb to her lips and drank cautiously. Some color seemed to return to her face, though the tension remained etched around her eyes. He offered the ration pack. "Food." She eyed the gray paste oozing from the packet with profound distaste. "What substance is this? Lunch, dinner, survival?" She wrinkled her nose, a very human-like expression of disgust. "It lacks resonance." "Yeah, well, it keeps you from starving." He squeezed some onto his own finger and ate it, making a face. "See, delicious." A ghost of her smile touched her lips, faint but present. "Your definition of delicious is questionable, Kaelin the noisy human." "You wound me, Xylia the picky eater." The banter felt fragile, tentative, but better than the heavy silence. She didn't take the ration pack, instead closing her eyes again, focusing inward. "I need to recalibrate, shield myself." "Okay." He backed away, giving her space. He sat on the floor, leaning against the opposite wall, the cool metal a welcome anchor. He needed to think, to plan. Selling the core was priority one. He knew a few fences here, none trustworthy but some less likely to slit his throat than others. A Wiki named Jax had a reputation for discretion if the price was right. But moving the core was risky. It pulsed with energy, even shielded in his pack. Anyone with the right sensors could detect it. And Xylia, she was the bigger risk. If the Z-Crow were actively hunting, Xantis was temporary at best. They needed a new destination, somewhere remote, somewhere safe, somewhere he could leave her. The thought surfaced, cold and practical, find her a sanctuary, collect his fee, maybe skim a bit off the core sale for his trouble and walk away, back to his life, free and clear. He glanced at her curled form on the bunk. The light on her skin was still suppressed, but he could almost imagine the soft glow beneath the surface, the intricate patterns shifting with her thoughts, her emotions. He remembered her touching the console, the way the temple had sung back to her. He remembered the staggering weight of her century-long isolation. Walking away suddenly felt hollow, like leaving behind something intrinsically valuable, something far more important than the core. He scrubbed a hand over his face. Scrap, I am so screwed. Xylia stirred, her eyes opening again. They seemed clearer now, focused on him. The noise, it recedes slightly. I have erected a partial filter. Good, he said, relieved. That's good. You are troubled, she observed, her head tilting. Your core light churns, conflict, he sighed, thinking. About what to do next, where to go. Where we go, she corrected softly. He met her gaze. There was no demand in her voice, just a simple statement of fact, an assumption of unity that somehow felt right. Terrifying, but right. Yeah, he agger. The word tasting foreign but true. Where we go. Over the next cycle, a strange routine settled in the cramped room. Kalen ventured out cautiously, making discreet inquiries about Jax the fence, securing slightly better rations, and gathering whispers about off-world ship movements. He learned nothing concrete about Z-Kral activity, which was both relieving and unnerving. Xylia remained inside, conserving her energy and strengthening her internal shields against Xanthus's psychic static. She rarely spoke unless spoken to, spending hours in a state of quiet contemplation that Kalen mistook for sleep, until he saw the faint, rhythmic pulse of grayish light under her closed eyelids. Despite the suppression, tiny flickers of her true nature sometimes escaped. A touch to the wall left a fleeting shimmer. A sigh sometimes carried a faint, melodic undertone. Kalen found himself watching her, fascinated by these glimpses, by the contrast between her ethereal nature and their grimy surroundings. He learned to read the subtle shifts in the muted patterns on her skin when she thought he wasn't looking, a swirl of violet for concentration, a flicker of silver for unease, a soft, almost imperceptible gold when he brought her back a sly, ghtly less disgusting ration bar. The forced proximity bred a strange kind of intimacy. They navigated the small space around each other, a constant awareness of the other's presence. An accidental brush of hands sending a jolt through them both. The shared silence, sometimes comfortable, sometimes tense. He caught her watching him too, her dark eyes filled with an unnerving intensity, as if she were cataloging his every gesture, every flicker of emotion he tried so hard to hide. One evening, returning with information that Jax would meet him, Kalen found Xylia sitting cross-legged on the bunk, her eyes closed, humming softly. It wasn't a tune exactly, but a series of resonant notes that seemed to vibrate in the air, smoothing out the harsh edges of the room, chasing away the lingering scent of stale synthale. The sound settled something deep inside him, a balm he hadn't known he needed. He stopped in the doorway, just listening. The faint gray patterns on her skin pulsed gently with the hum, a soft, internal rhythm. When the humming faded, she opened her eyes and looked directly at him. The usual defenses weren't quite in place. Her gaze was open, vulnerable. Your core light brightens when you hear the harmony, she said soft. He felt caught, exposed. It's calming. It is meant to be a small echo of the song of creation. She patted the bunk beside her. Sit, Kalen, your energy is frayed from the outside. He hesitated. Sitting that close felt like crossing a line, but her invitation was simple, direct. He sat down, the mattress dipping under his weight, leaving only inches between them. He could feel the warmth radiating from her now, even without the visible light. Her unique scent, ozone, and that sweet, unidentifiable flower was stronger here, less diluted by the port stench. Jax agreed to meet, he said, needing to fill the silence. Tomorrow, docking bay 9 midnight, she nodded. The core. Yeah, have to sell it, it's the only way. He braced himself for her objection, for a reminder of its significance. Instead, she reached out, her cool fingers gently touching the back of his hand where it rested on the bunk. The contact sent an immediate jolt, stronger this time, traveling up his arm like warm honey. Where her fingers rested, a soft turquoise light bloomed on her skin, reflecting in his own. He didn't pull away. The resonance it holds, it is only a fragment, she murmured, her gaze fixed on their joined hands. The true harmon. Why it exists between beings, in connection. Her thumb brushed lightly over his knuckles. The light on her hand intensified, swirling with gold. He felt an answering warmth spread through his chest, uncoiling something tight and guarded. Your species relies so much on words, she continued, her voice barely a whisper. But words can be dissonant, misleading. Resonance does not lie. He looked from their hands to her face. Her eyes were dark pools, reflecting the faint light from her touch. The air crackled with unspoken energy, a tension far more potent than the fear or awkwardness that had defined their earlier interactions. This was different, a deliberate offering, a question asked without words. His heart hammered against his ribs. He could feel the shield around his own core light, as she called it, trembling, threatening to dissolve under the gentle pressure of her touch, her proximity, her unnerving perception. He wanted to pull back, retreat to the safety of sarcasm and detachment. But he also wanted more. He wanted to understand the harmony she spoke of. He wanted to feel the full force of her light, unfiltered and unrestrained. He turned his hand slowly, carefully, lacing his fingers with hers. Her cool skin again. Since his rough palm felt both alien and incredibly intimate. The light on her hand surged, washing over both of them in a wave of brilliant turquoise and gold, chasing the shadows from the corners of the room. Her breath hitched, and her eyes widened slightly, mirroring his own surprise at the intensity of the connection. Resonance. It flowed between them, warm, electric, undeniable. And in that moment, the squalor of Port Xantus, the danger of the Z-Crow, the uncertainty of their future, it all faded into the background, eclipsed by the simple, overwhelming truth of their joined hands and the silent song passing between them. The light pulsed, a silent conversation flowing through their clasped hands. Kalen felt stripped bare, his usual defenses useless against this direct sensory connection. He saw flickers in the light echoes of her loneliness in the temple, the chilling silence left by the Z-Crow, but also a deep wellspring of curiosity, a fascination with his own noisy human complexity. It wasn't like reading thoughts. It was like feeling the emotional resonance behind them, raw and unfiltered. He knew somehow, she felt his own turmoil, the ingrained mistrust, the yearning for freedom battling the unexpected pull toa. RDS her the fear of vulnerability. Her thumb stroked the back of his hand again, a gesture of acceptance, not judgment. The turquoise light softened, swirling with warm rose-gold hues. "You fear connection," she murmured, her voice low and intimate, confirming what the light already told him. "Yet you resonate with it." He couldn't deny it, not when the proof was literally glowing between them. "It's complicated," he managed, his voice rough. "Being connected makes you a target, easier to hurt." A flicker of silver-gray understanding, perhaps sadness, crossed her skin. "Isolation is its own wound, Kalen." She leaned slightly closer, her shoulder brushing his. The simple contact sent another wave of warmth through him. Her scent filled his senses, intoxicating. He could see the intricate, almost invisible scales shimmering near her temples, the delicate flutter of the fins along her neck responding to the energy flow. She was utterly alien, yet in this moment profoundly present, profoundly real. His gaze dropped to her lips. They were pale now, without the light, but full, curved slightly. The urge to close the remaining distance, to taste, to deepen this non-verbal communion was overwhelming. He saw her eyes track his gaze. Her own pupils dilating slightly, though she had no pupils in the human sense. The obsidian depth seemed to darken, absorb more light. The air grew thick, heavy with anticipation. The faint hum he'd heard her making earlier seemed to resonate within his own chest now, a low thrumming that matched the pulse between their joined hands. He started to lean in, drawn by an invisible current. She didn't pull back. Her breath hitched again, a soft sound in the charged silence. Her free hand rose slowly, hesitantly, towards his face. Her cool fingertips hovered just above his cheek, tracing the line of his jaw without touching, yet he felt it like a brand, raising goosebumps on his skin. The space between them dwindled to nothing. Their breaths mingled. He could feel the energy radiating from her, a palpable force that made his nerves sing. Just as their lips were about to meet, a harsh clanging echoed from the corridor outside, followed by loud, drunken shouting. The moment shattered. Kalen jerked back, instinctively reaching for the blaster that wasn't there. Xylia flinched, the light on her hand instantly retracting, leaving only the faint gray patterns. The connection snapped, leaving a jarring emptiness. The warmth vanished, laced by the cold reality of their surroundings. Scrap, Kalen hissed, annoyance warring with the lingering thrum of frustrated desire. He stood up quickly, moving towards the door, listening intently. The shouting faded down the corridor, probably just typical Xantis nightlife. He turned back to Xylia. She was still sitting on the bunk, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, the residual glow gone, her expression shuttered. The vulnerability he'd seen moments before was masked again, replaced by a cool reserve. The air between them felt awkward, charged with unspoken tension. "Just some drunkards," he said, trying to sound casual. "Nothing to worry about," she nodded stiffly, avoiding his gaze. "We should rest. You have the meeting tomorrow." He hesitated, wanting to recapture the connection, to finish what the interruption had started. But the mood was broken, the delicate trust fractured by the intrusion. Pushing it now felt wrong, invasive. He sighed inwardly. "Yeah, rest sounds good." He gestured towards the bunk. "You take that, I'll take the floor." She didn't argue, simply swung her legs up and curled back into the position he'd found her in earlier, pulling the cloak around her like armor. Kalen grabbed a thin blanket, his pack, and settled against the wall, the cold metal seeping through his clothes. He closed his eyes, but sleep felt miles away. The memory of her touch, the bloom of light, the feeling of resonance, it lingered, potent and demanding. He'd come closer to genuine connection in those few moments than he had in years of carefully maintained solitude, and it scared the hell out of him. But beneath the fear, something else stirred, a fierce, protective surge, coupled with a desire so intense it made his teeth ache. He wanted her, not just her light or her alienness, but her, Xylia, the lonely princess who hummed harmonies and saw the light inside him he tried so hard to deny. Selling the core suddenly felt like a betrayal, not just of her heritage, but of the fragile bond blooming between them. But without credits, they were trapped. He was trapped between necessity and a connection that felt increasingly non-negotiable, and he had no idea how to navigate it. Midnight at Docking Bay 9 was as charming as the rest of Port Xantis. Leaking pipes dripped iridescent slime, flickering emergency lights cast long, distorted shadows, and the air hummed with the low throb of idling freighters and illicit deals. Kalen stood near a stack of corroded fuel canisters, his hand resting near his blaster, scanning the gloomy expanse. Xylia waited deeper in the shadows, cloaked and still, though Kalen could feel her nervous energy like static electricity. He'd argued against her coming, but she'd insisted. "Where you go, I go," she'd stated, her voice quiet but firm, leaving no room for debate. The faint gray patterns on her skin had pulsed with resolve. Now Kalen regretted it. This was his world, the grimy underbelly he navigated, and it felt wrong exposing her to its dangers. A bulky figure detached itself from the deeper shadows near a decommissioned ore hauler. Wiki, tall, leathery skin, top-knot braids swinging. "Jax." "Kalen," the Wiki rasped, his voice like sand on metal. "You look worse than usual." "Always a pleasure, Jax," Kalen replied dryly. "You got the payment," Jax gestured with a three-fingered hand. Two heavily armed thugs, a Rhodian and a hulking Claduinian, stepped out from behind him, flanking him menacingly. "Standard procedure. Payment is contingent on verification," Jax said, his small, dark eyes glittering greedily. "Show me the merchandise." Kalen hesitated. This was the point of no return. He glanced back towards Xylia's shadowed Pazidi. He couldn't see her, but he felt her presence, a silent weight in the darkness. Selling this felt wrong, utterly wrong now. But the alternative, change of plans, Jax, Kalen heard himself say, the words surprising even him. Jax's non-existent eyebrows rose. "Change of plans, we had an agreement." "Yeah, well, circumstances changed. The item's not for sale." Jax chuckled, a harsh, grating sound. "You dragged me out here at midnight risking patrol attention for a change of plans. That's not good business, Kalen." "Sorry to inconvenience you," Kalen said, his hand tightening on his blaster grip. "Consider it a social call." The Rhodian thug shifted, raising his blaster rifle slightly. The Claduinian cracked his knuckles. Jax's eyes narrowed. Nobody walks away from a deal with Jax, especially not with something energetic. He tilted his head, sniffing the air. "My sensors picked up unusual readings from your ship earlier. High-yield power signature. Unique resonance." Scrap, they knew or suspected enough. Whatever you think I have, I don't, Kalen bluffed, trying to keep his voice steady. You waste my time, Jack snarled. He nodded curtly to his thugs. Persuade him. The Rhodian raised his rifle. Kalen drew his blast, diving behind the fuel canisters just as a searing bolt of energy vaporized the spot where he'd been standing. Another shot ricocheted off the metal drums. He fired back, aiming for the Rhodian's weapon. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw movement from Xylia's position. "Stay back," he yelled. But she was already moving, flowing out of the shadows with astonishing speed, her cloak billowing behind her. She didn't run towards the fight, but towards the docking bay controls on the far wall. The Claduinian thug turned, startled by her sudden appearance, and fired a warning shot near her feet. Xylia didn't even flinch. She slammed her palm against the main atmospheric vent control panel. Instantly, a deafening roar filled the docking bay as massive vents overhead blasted hurricane-force winds downwards, kicking up dust, debris, and general chaos. Jax and his thugs staggered, momentarily blinded and disoriented by the sudden gale. Kalen seized the opportunity, firing rapidly, disabling the Rhodian's rifle and forcing the Claduinian to duck for cover. Jax cursed, shielding his eyes, trying to aim his own heavy blaster pistol through the swirling dust. "Xylia now," Kalen shouted over the roar. She was already sprinting towards H. I am moving with uncanny grace through the artificial storm. As she reached him, she grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. This way. Instead of heading back towards the rustbucket's berth, she pulled him towards a maintenance conduit access hatch he hadn't even noticed before, half hidden behind ventilation grating. She slapped another panel beside it and the hatch hissed open. "After them," Jax bellowed, firing blindly into the dust cloud. Kalen didn't need telling twice. He scrambled into the narrow, dark opening after Xylia, pulling the heavy hatch closed just as blaster fire sparked against the outer metal. They were plunged into near-total darkness, the roar of the vents fatting above them, replaced by the echoing drip of water and the scuttling of unseen things. Kalen leaned against the cold, damp wall, catching his breath, adrenaline singing in his veins. "Nice trick with the vents," he panted. He felt, rather than saw, Xylia turn towards him in the darkness. A faint, soft glow began to emanate from her skin, pushing back the oppressive blackness, bathing the narrow tunnel in ethereal turquoise light. Her eyes, luminous now, found his. "Necessity fosters invention," she replied, a slight tremor in her voice raying her own fear. The light flickered, revealing the flush on her cheeks, the rapid rise and fall of her chest. Close quarters again. The adrenaline of the fight, the shared danger, the proximity in the glowing darkness, it reignited the tension from the room but amplified, sharper. He could see a smear of grime on her cheek, the way her hair clung damply to her temples. He reached out, instinctively brushing the smudge away with his thumb. His touch lingered on her cool skin. The light pulsed, warming to gold where he touched her. She didn't pull away. Her gaze held his wide and searching in the soft glow. "You did not sell the core," she stated, her voice barely a whisper. "No," he admitted, "couldn't do it." "Why?" He looked at her, at the unearthly light playing across her features, at the trust shining in her dark eyes. The answer felt simple, yet monumentally complex. "Because it's part of your song," he said softly. "And because some things aren't worth selling." Her breath caught. The light around them surged, brilliant and warm, swirling with golds, pinks, and vibrant blues, reflecting in his eyes, surrounding them, cocooning them in shared resonance. The fear, the grime, the danger outside, it all dissolved in radiant intimacy of her glow. She lifted her hand, mirroring his earlier gesture, and gently touched his cheek. This time the contact was electric, profound. "Kalen," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. And then, finally, closing the last inch of space, she kissed him. Her lips were cool at first, then warmed instantly against his, soft and surprisingly yielding. The kiss was tentative for a bare second before deepening, fueled by the adrenaline of the escape and the potent connection crackling between them. It wasn't just mouth on mouth. It was an exchange of energy, a continuation of the resonance they'd shared earlier, but physical now, undeniable. The light radiating from her intensified, washing over him in waves of dizzying color and sensation. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her flush against him, deepening the kiss. She melted into his embrace, her body molding perfectly to his, her hands coming up to cup his face. Her touch was electric, sending shivers down his spine. The narrow maintenance tunnel faded away, replaced by the universe contained within her glow, within her touch. He felt the noise she spoke of, not the chaotic static of Xantus, but the clear, vibrant hum of her own being, her. Emotions laid bare, relief, fear, a startling depth of affection, and a longing that resonated perfectly with his own. He broke the kiss, gasping for breath, resting his forehead against hers. They were both trembling. The turquoise and gold light swirled around them, pulsing in time with their frantic heartbeats. Her obsidian eyes searched his, luminous and wide. "Your resonance," she breathed, her voice husky. "It calls to mine." "Yeah," he managed, his own voice rough, loud and clear. He brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering on the smooth, cool skin of her temple. The subtle fins there vibrated under his touch. He kissed her again, slower this time, exploring, learning the shape of her mouth, the taste of her. She responded with an eagerness that stole his breath, her hands sliding from his face down his neck, her cool fingers tracing the line of his collarbone beneath his jacket, leaving trails of tingling warmth. This was insane. Hiding in a dripping maintenance tunnel on the galaxy's armpit moon, kissing a glowing alien princess while thugs hunted them topside. But it also felt like the sanest, most real thing he'd done in his entire life. The carefully constructed walls around his heart, Aller. Edie cracked, crumbled into dust. There was no going back to the easy cynicism, the detached solitude. She pulled back slightly, her eyes dark with desire, the light on her skin shifting to deeper, richer hues, violet, crimson, gold. "Kalen," she began, then hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. "Is this how your kind connects?" He smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile. "It's one way, a pretty good way usually." He gently touched the glowing patterns on her neck, feeling the faint vibration beneath her skin. "You have others," she nodded, her gaze intense. "Touch, resonance, the sharing of light." She brought her hand up, palm flat against his chest, right over his heart. The light flared, sinking through his clothes, through his skin, directly into his core. It wasn't painful, but it was intensely intimate, a direct connection that bypassed thought and went straight to feeling. He gasped, his knees weakening. He felt seen. Understood on a level words could never achieve. He felt her presence not just around him, but in him, a warm, vibrant light merging with his own shielded ember, coaxing it brighter. Vulnerability washed over him, sharp and terrifying, but mingled with an equal, why powerful sense of below. He covered her hand with his own, pressing it tighter against his chest. "Okay," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "Show me." Her lips curved in that uniquely beautiful smile, full of promise and alien mystery. The light intensified, swirling around them like a living nebula. She leaned in, her forehead touching his again, her eyes closing. "Share the song with me, Kalen," she murmured. And as the light enveloped them, cocooning them in warmth and shared energy, Kalen surrendered completely, letting his carefully guarded self dissolve into the harmony, finally understanding what it meant to truly connect, to share his light, not just his touch. The universe shrank to this single point of contact, this radiant blend of human and alien, noise and harmony, finding solace and ignition in each other's arms. They stayed hidden in the network of tunnels for what felt like hours, moving cautiously when necessary, but mostly finding secluded alcoves where the overwhelming intimacy could continue, uninterrupted. Kalen had never experienced anything like it. Sharing resonance with Xylia was like diving into an ocean of pure sensation and emotion. It wasn't solely physical, though the physical connection was potent, eating them both with a desperate, starved intensity. Every kiss, every touch was amplified, imbued with layers of meaning conveyed through shifting light and shared energy. He learned the language of her skin, the way turquoise deepened to sapphire with pleasure, the sudden flares of gold that accompanied sharp surges of desire, the soft, pulsing rose of affection and growing trust. She, in turn, seemed fascinated by his human responses, the flush of his skin, the race of his pulse, the way his breath caught. She explored his body with a mixture of curiosity and reverence, her cool fingers tracing scars, mapping muscles, eliciting shivers with touches that were sometimes feather-light, sometimes surprisingly firm. Her own responsiveness was a revelation. Accustomed to a century of dormancy and isolation, the sudden flood of physical and energetic connection seemed to awaken something primal within her. She met his intensity with her own, sometimes leading, sometimes following, her movements fluid and graceful even in the cramped, awkward spaces. There was an urgency to their coupling, born of danger and long-suppressed need, but beneath it something deeper was forging, a bond built not just on attraction, but on shared vulnerability. Liddy and the startling recognition of finding sanctuary in the most unexpected of places, in the most unexpected of beings. When the initial frenzy eased, they lay tangled together in a small, dry junction, Xylia's head resting on Kaelin's chest, her light a soft, steady golden-white glow that illuminated their small haven. Her fins lay flat against her back, relaxed, and her tail was loosely curled around his leg. Kaelin stroked her hair, marveling at the silkiness of it, the faint luminescence it seemed to hold. The earlier fear and tension had melted away, replaced by a profound sense of peace, of rightness. "I never," he started, then stopped, unsure how to put the overwhelming experience into words. She tilted her head back, looking up at him, her dark eyes soft in the glow. "Never shared resonance. Never felt anything like this," he admitted. "So connected, like seeing without eyes." A gentle smile touched her lips. "It is the Lumina way to know and be known completely." She traced a pattern on his chest with her fingertip, the light following her touch. "Your inner light, it burns much brighter now, less shielded." He felt it too, a warmth and openness he hadn't felt since, well, possibly ever. The pragmatic Scaven. R was still there, but he felt fundamentally changed, rearranged by her presence, her touch, her light. The thought of leaving her, of going back to his solitary existence, now felt impossible, unbearable. "Xylia," he said, his voice serious. "The Z-Crow, they won't stop hunting you, and now they might be hunting me too after that stun in the docking bay." Her expression grew somber, the light dimming slightly to a worried violet. "I know. We can't stay here. We need to get off Xantus, find somewhere safe, somewhere they won't look." "Where?" she asked, the question laced with the weariness of someone who had been seeking sanctuary for far too long. Kaelin thought for a moment, running through star charts in his head, discarding options. No civilized world would shelter them without questions, without scans that could reveal Xylia or the core. The outer rim was dangerous, chaotic, but maybe there are legends, he said slowly. Whispers among deep space haulers. About the shrouded worlds. Systems hidden inside unstable nebulae, protected by navigational hazards and sensor ghosts. Places off the official maps. Her eyes lit up with cautious hope. Places of quiet. Places nobody goes unless they're desperate or completely low. Sent hard to find, harder to track anyone who makes it inside. He met her gaze. "It's a long shot, dangerous journey, but maybe we could find a place there. Somewhere you could finally be safe. Somewhere we could be safe." She searched his face, her own resonance washing over him, feeling his sincerity, his resolve. A single, luminous tear like quicksilver escaped her eye and traced a glowing path down her cheek. She reached up, touching his face, her palm warm now. "Together," she whispered. "Together," he confirmed, his voice firm. He leaned down and captured the glowing tear with a gentle kiss, sealing the promise. The light around them pulsed, warm and steady, a silent affirmation. They had a direction, a desperate hope, and most importantly, each other. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril, but facing it together felt infinitely better than facing anything alone. Getting back to the rust bucket required navigating the labyrinthine maintenance tunnels using Kaelin's patchy memory and Xylia's subtle sense of energy flows, bypassing Jax's likely watchers. They emerged into a deserted auxiliary cargo bay near Kaelin's berth, cloaked and moving like shadows. The ship looked intact, untouched. Kaelin quickly an external diagnostics while Xylia kept watch, her senses scanning for any lingering hostile presence. Clear. Inside the cockpit, the familiar cramped space felt different now. charged with the memory of their connection, the promise of their shared future. Kalen powered up the engines, the familiar thrum a reassuring sound. Xylia settled into the co-pilot seat, the suppressed gray patterns on her skin seeming less like a shield now and more like banked embers, ready to flare. "Coordinates?" she asked, her voice calm, professional, though her eyes held a new warmth when she looked at him. Kalen pulled up the fragmented data he had on the shrouded worlds, mostly rumors, hearsay, and conflicting vectors gleaned from drunken spacers over the years. "It's not exact, more like aiming for a ghost story." He plotted a course towards the densest, most electrically unstable nebula on the edge of known space, the Tempest Caldera. "Strap in. This is going to be tricky navigation." Lifting off from Port Xantus was smoother this time, no atmospheric turbulence, just the clean silence of the void. Kalen expertly piloted them away from the junk moon, pushing the rust bucket's engines harder than usual. Every sensor was active, scanning foe. Our pursuit, nothing, for now. As they jumped to hyperspace, the star line streaking past the viewport, a comfortable silence settled between them. Kalen risked a glance at Xylia. She was gazing out at the warp tunnel, but her hand rested lightly on the console near his. He reached over, covering her hand with his. She instantly interlaced her fingers with his, a soft turquoise glow blooming between their palms, a silent reassurance. The journey took several cycles. They flew through sparsely populated systems, docking only once at an automated refueling station deep in unincorporated territory. They spoke little, conserving energy, focusing on the journey, but the connection between them was a constant, palpable presence. Sometimes they shared rations in comfortable silence. Sometimes Xylia would hum her resonant harmonies, filling the small cabin with peace. Sometimes Kalen would find her watching him with an intensity that still made his heart stumble, her eyes full of questions she hadn't yet asked. One cycle out from the estimated edge of the Tempest Caldera, Kalen was running a systems check when Xylia spoke, her voice soft. "Kalen, why do you live this way?" He looked up from the console. "What way?" "Alone, drifting, see. Hazing credits, always looking over your shoulder." He leaned back, considering how to explain a life shaped by caution, by small betrayals, by the calculated necessity of detachment in a dangerous galaxy. "Easier," he said finally. "Less complicated, nobody to rely on, nobody to let you down." "Or to hold you when you fall," she countered gently. He met her gaze. She wasn't judging, just observing, trying to understand the dissonances within him. "Falling wasn't really part of the plan," he admitted with a wry smile. "The plan was not getting close enough to fall." "A lonely plan." "Yeah, maybe." He looked at their joined hands, the soft light pulsing between them. "Seems kind of stupid now." She squeezed his hand. "The past shapes us, but it does not have to define our future song." As they approached the Tempest Caldera, the ship began to shudder. Sensor readings became erratic, ghost signals flickering across the screens. Outside, the view shifted from stardusted blackness to roiling clouds of ionized gas, lit by flashes of internal lightning. It was like flying into the heart of a perpetual thunderstorm the size of a solar system. "Here we go," Kalen muttered, his hands tightening on the con. Trolls flying through the nebu. La required constant adjustments, navigating shifting gravimetric tides and dodging arcs of plasma. The rust bucket groaned and protested. Xylia sat beside him, her eyes closed, one hand resting on the console, the other still linked with his. Faint patterns of light pulsed across her skin as she seemed to feel their way through the chaos, occasionally murmuring warnings. Energy surged to port, density shift ahead, that often anticipated his own sensor readings. They were a team, navigating the storm together, his piloting skill augmented by her unique senses. Deeper they flew, into the chaotic heart of the nebula, and then abruptly they broke through into a pocket of calm. The raging storm clouds were still visible all around them, but here space was clear, quiet. And nestled within this improbable sanctuary was a small cluster of planets, orbiting a stable, yellow star. Green continents swirled beneath cloud cover on one. Rings glittered around another. It was a hidden haven exactly as the legends described. Kalen stared, speechless. Xylia opened her eyes, her own expression filled with awe. The light on her skin brightened, shifting through hopeful shades of green and gold. "The shrouded worlds," she breathed. Kalen let out a long breath he hadn't realized he was holding, relief washing over him in a dizzying wave. He turned to her, a wide grin spreading across his face. "We made it." She returned his grin, her smile radiant, lighting up the cockpit more effectively than the overhead panels. "We did." He unstrapped himself, pulling her into a fierce embrace, burying his face in her hair, inhaling her unique scent. She clung to him, her light washing over them both, warm and bright. It wasn't just relief. It was the profound joy of arrival, of finding not just a place but a shared future. As they held each other, the power core, still safely stowed away, pulsed once, a soft turquoise thrum that seemed to resonate with the newfound peace, a single note joining their emergent harmony. They had found their quiet place finally together.